So, I've lived in the same town all my life. I've never really been one of those people that wants to see the world. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just not my jam. I'm very content with my simple little life in a town of only about 6,000 people. The internet, more specifically Wi-Fi accessibility, hadn't quite reached us until a decade or so ago, and even then, most were too poor to afford any kind of setup. Now, we're not backwards, incest-ridden savages or anything. I assume mostly everyone who's still here is pretty much like me, just happy with their small life. Like Mrs. Weller. She's a widow, just down the road from where I live, and she's well known for taking in animals that need a second chance. She's got the acreage and know-how, and she's the only one around here that we could call a vet. Actually, she's the reason I'm writing this today. I've recently realized that some of the things that go on around here ain't exactly normal. You live somewhere long enough, and even if the status quo for us wasn't at all similar to how others live, we wouldn't really know. The closest town is separated from us by miles and miles of farmland, about a 45-minute drive. But we've got the dollar store, a small grocery place, a gas station and post office, so why would we ever have a reason to go poking around elsewhere, right? Despite having limited access to the internet at best, we all had a radio. We needed one, really. At least once a week we'd be informed about some kind of danger, I guess. To us, it was the same kind of warning as the typical, there's been a crash on blah 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 highway, so, plan your road accordingly. Anyway, sorry, I got to rambling. I'll get on to good part, I suppose. A couple of nights ago, I had the radio on, just like my mama always told me to do, when the familiar sound of an incoming PSA aroused me from my sleep. See, we were taught to always keep some kind of radio going, whether it was in the truck, at the dinner table, or while we slept. The little box on the bedside table started to sing out the alarm we'd all come to be familiar with, not dissimilar to a tornado warning on TV. After about 10 seconds of this, the male announcer began to speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a PSA for county residents. Mrs. Weller has informed local police that a horse has chewed through the fence and escaped. Please, if you see this animal, stay far away and call 911 to report your sighting. If you begin to hear voices or have thoughts that are not your own, turn away and run. If you begin to feel faint or nauseous while looking at the animal, turn away and run. If the animal makes eye contact with you or begins to walk in your direction, turn away and run. If you cannot see any horse-like animal, but begin to feel a heavy pressure on your chest, enter your vehicle or run home as quickly as possible. If you are inside your home at this moment, remain there until an update has been broadcasted notifying the capture of this animal. Lastly, remember that horses do not speak.
Now, I hadn't been too worried about the announcement at the time since I was already in bed. Even though it's a small town, most of us usually lock our doors at night anyway. I regarded it the same way I do just about every time the PSA tones come across the radio. I made a mental note to keep an ear out for the all okay broadcast and drifted back to sleep, only a little bit concerned with the dull pain growing in my chest. I awoke just fine in the morning. When I sat at the kitchen table, a thought started creeping up on me. I'd been so tired when the PSA called out last night, but as the grumble of the coffee maker softly filled the silence, I really took a moment to analyze the words. Well, of course horses don't speak. Everyone knows that, I thought. Even though our town, probably even our county, was indefinitely weird, I'd be confident in saying that all the residents are firmly rooted in reality. We know the announcements are strange, but after generations of tribal knowledge, they kind of just fell into the background. Come to think of it, I really couldn't remember hearing about anyone around here leaving for a different life. I filled my cup, deciding that I'd run by the gas and munch for an egg sandwich so I could sit and talk with the other farmers while I finished breakfast. I got into the truck. The door latch is a little sticky, so I had to slam it loudly a few times before it shut. The sky was still dark, and the air was chilly and humid in the morning hours. I kept my handheld radio on the center console, as the radio in this old truck had stopped chugging years ago when that family of three-headed squirrels made a nest in my wiring harness that I was never able to fully fix. Not the only time I had to deal with those crafty little things either. Last winter, they nested up in the attic with insulation and old... Fuck! I said to the dark truck cab as I slammed on the brakes. The horse. God, I completely forgot. There had been no accompanying broadcast announcing the capture of the horse. A small pang of fear settled in my chest. Not quite blooming into a full-on panic yet as I started the 5-point turn it would take to turn around on the 2-lane I'd been on. The control was short-lived though. Just as my car became completely perpendicular to the road, my headlights illuminated the last thing I wanted to see standing in the half-grown soybean field in front of me. It definitely did not look like a horse. The neck was about twice as long as it should have been. Shredded and necrotic flesh clung to its emaciated form. The mane was frizzy and rat-nested. But the worst part was the sheer size of the thing. My best guess for breed was thoroughbred, but the damn thing still stood around 21 hands tall just at the shoulders. And for those who don't know, 21 hands is about 7 feet tall. I'd like to say I kept my cool. That years living what's most likely the weirdest place ever has hardened me into a farm boy tough enough to scoff out at natural horrors like this one. But I totally didn't. No, I slammed the gas and spun the tires fast enough to complete my U-turn and only skip into the ditch for about a foot or two. For only a moment I'd hoped that the horse would just keep being creepy in its creepy little spot on the side of this creepy little road. But of course it didn't. As soon as the truck started moving again, the horse began to run toward me. I felt the truck shake as I leapt into the bed and started pounding its rotten hooves on the top of the cab. My frantic mind only had one idea as I backtracked down the road. After all, Mrs. Weller was only a few miles down from me. I turned on the unpaved road, wheels spinning and sliding on loose gravel as I continued pushing the pedal so hard I was worried it'd break through the rusty floor panels. I could hear crunching glass as the horse nipped at my back windows. Voices screamed in my head all the while. "You should drive into the ditch. Look, there's a telephone pole. Take your chance." I did my best to tune it all out, but the exaggerated thud into my chest was accentuated by an immense pressure. It felt like someone was stacking bricks on my chest. I turned down the next road, and now it was a straight shot to Mrs. Weller's farm. Suddenly, the ear-splitting sound of tearing metal and shattering glass faded away. In the moment, fear blinded my senses. Muscle memory was the only thing guiding me towards my destination. The lights at the end of her driveway flickered and fought with my headlights. Steel hauling ass, I slid the corner into Mrs. Weller's driveway, and the truck lifted a couple inches with the release of the weight off the suspension. Just out the corner of my eye, I saw the brown flash of a possibly large and possibly fast horse running towards the back pasture. I took a breath and steadied myself to back out onto the road when the radio crackled loudly to life.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a PSA for county residents. Mrs. Weller's horse has been returned to her property, and it is now safe to leave your homes. We hope you have a good day. God bless.
I jumped at a sudden tap on the glass to my left. Sweet Mrs. Weller stood with a grateful smile and a steaming cup of coffee to replace what had spilled out of my travel mug, which was now rolling around on the passenger floorboards of the truck. I know this town is weird, and maybe even horrifying. But at the end of the day, I knew my neighbors would be around to lend a helping hand when needed. I drove back down the road, on my way to a warm egg sandwich with a travel mug full of steaming coffee, still feeling content with my simple little life.